Okay, there we are. Well, welcome to our Park City Education Foundation Classroom Grant Help session. I hope that this will help our educators and staff here in the school district with any questions or concerns about applying for a classroom grant. Hopefully we'll keep this conversation very casual and fun. And yeah, that is that. And we will start. We're going to start with our agenda. We'll do introductions, then move into reviewing the classroom grant guidelines. I have some fantastic special guests that are here. Drew Frank with Park City School District, as well as Heidi Donovan, finance manager here at the Ed Foundation. Drew comes in with the IDEA process. He'll help give a little bit of information as to how the district's IDEA process fits in with our classroom grants, answer any questions pertaining to those or possibly other Park City School District policies. Then we'll go over the timeline and review process for our grant program, when it is, when will applicants know, who looks at what, hopefully answer all those burning questions. Then we'll do some tips as to what the committee is looking for in an application. And finally, there'll be an opportunity to ask some questions. That being said, we are a very intimate group. So if you do have some question, Pamela, as we're rolling along, please just jump in and ask. No need to raise your hand. Just take yourself off mute and speak up, please. We'll quick do introductions. I'm Kara Cody. I'm with Park State Education Foundation, and I oversee our programs here at PCEF, including our granting programs, obviously. And if I guess, Pamela, if you want to share, you shared a little bit at the beginning, kind of who you are, but if you want to go again, and then we'll have Drew and Heidi introduce themselves as well.
Perfect. So my name is Pamela Bello, and I'm a parent. I have two daughters at McPaulin, and I'm going to be helping Julie Alvarez, who's a pre-K teacher, write her grant. And she has not done it before. And so I told her I'll help her. What I do, my real work, I'm the director of behavioral health prevention. I work at the health department. I do drug and alcohol prevention.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Pam. I'm Drew Frank. I'm the Chief Information Officer with the Park City School District. So I'm over ultimately technology and assessment and a couple of other things like that. And I'm here to bring in some knowledge around our IDEA process and some of what we look for and why we look for those things.
And I'm Heidi Donovan. I'm the finance manager here at the Education Foundation, and I help where I can with Kara and all of those grants. Once they're approved, I help her get them into the system and create those grant codes and get them all out to you guys and help kind of on the back end of things.
Yes, I would be very, very, very lost without Heidi. So, and she'll be, just sharing a little bit more about, budget and yeah. So first things first is where is everything located? And everything meaning the application, guidelines, information, all of that is, of course, on our PCEF website under the For Educators tab. Just waiting and waiting. Here we go. So Pam, what you'll do is you'll show Ms. Alvarez. So under For Educators, classroom grants, click on that. And here is all of the information. Here, this big button right here is the application and guidelines. And then there's some other resources under here as well that may answer some questions or just provide some additional help. And then after today, we will post the recording of the session right here as well. So here we go. Here is what the application looks like. It is in a submission management system called Submittable. There are kind of a gazillion different products out there, but Submittable is the one that we use here. at the Ed Foundation. It's kind of stupid easy. I hope it's very easy for me to manage for our reviewers, and I hope that it's easy for the applicants as well. You will need to create an account. So please pass that on to Ms. Alvarez if she has not done so already. And something to keep in mind too, Pamela, is that the application needs to be done by Ms. Alvarez. You can help her, all of that, but it does need to come from her. And I strongly encourage her to create the account, because then in the future, she already has an account and all of her applications are there. And what she can do is invite you as a collaborator. This is a new feature to Submittable. Super excited. It's right here. In this corner right here, you just click on it, and then she'll put in your email address, and you can go in, help proofread, and help her collaborate on her submission. So here we go. Here is all of the guidelines. There are many yes, the guidelines do look daunting, but they are there for a reason, and we definitely encourage applicants to review those just to make sure we are all on the same page. Oops. And the guidelines, we have a few new things to point out. One is participatory grant making. PCEF shifted last year our focus to participatory grant making, and what that means is that we include those that are impacted in the decision-making process. Traditionally, it was community members and parents that made up our selection committee. While we still include community members and parents, we've also included educators and students, current students at the high school, as well as alumni of Park City High School as well, to be included in the decision making. And it really just makes for a more robust, holistic, and impactful program. So I'm just going to point that out. We've added a few new diversity, equity, and inclusion questions. The biggest thing that we want applicants to think about with these questions is who might be missing from a program and what resources might be needed in order to ensure everyone is able to participate. An example is, say you want to do an avalanche class, that requires kids to ski, snowboard. There's a lot of things that, could, be a barrier in preventing students from participating. For instance, a ski pass, clothing, transportation, things like that. So we are just trying to think, more just, bigger in some of those barriers, because we just want to ensure that, every student has a possibility to participate in a program. Build extra money into your budget request for next year. Can't stress this enough. Heidi, do you want to weigh in on that? As to why we want to possibly pad our budgets. Oh, Heidi, you're on mute.
Thank you, Kara. Sorry about that.
All good.
Yes, yeah, we do ask that you pad your budget, that you add a buffer in there, add a little bit more than you think you're going to spend. The reason is, first of all, you're not penalized for not spending all of your grant funds. So it's not that we're going to come after you and say, you need to spend all of this money. There's no penalty for over requesting. And the big thing is, if you don't request enough and you go over budget, that actually creates a lot of work for Kara and myself, and actually the folks at the district office as well, because we're having to do a lot of research as to why the grant went over budget. And then we have to contact the teacher and find out where they want the extra funds to come from, which we never want to ask that question. We always want to be able to, to pay for a grant in full. So that's really the reasoning behind that.
Thank you, Heidi. And then our collaborate feature on Submittable, which I had just showed you. Super excited for that. Then here are just some highlights from that list of guidelines, the really important ones. The first is that our maximum award amount is $45,000. The deadline is April 1. That is a hard deadline. So please keep that in mind. Also, I know that questions will come up and a lot of people wait until last minute to write grant applications. I write grant applications as well, and I am totally guilty of procrastinating. However, there is only one of me, and I only have so much time a few days before the deadline. So please just start early, especially if you need help, if you have questions, if you are a first-time applicant. So what we fund programs that impact academic success, the whole child and innovation. So pretty broad swath there. And as I let you all know before, applications must be written and managed by Park City School District faculty or staff. So, and then finally, our application is done via our submittable system. And just so you know, before you go, if you are funded, congratulations. And keep in mind a few things, as you're applying that, if you do receive funding, you will, need to meet these obligations. The first is that there is a program manager for the program, a Park City, school district staff or employee that is really, the point person, the champion for the program, our contact if we want to do a visit, if we would like photos, that really just kind of managing that relationship with us, the Ed Foundation. We do ask that you acknowledge Park City Education Foundation and recognize us. You can do that by a handy dandy PCEF supports this classroom sign, and any kind of communications to parents and families, be it an email, newsletter, class dojo or seesaw posts, Canvas, kind of any of those things that, parents are seeing, because really it's that recognition that helps us raise money to be able to continue to support classroom grants as well as our other programs. So then program report, those went out a couple of weeks ago. What that is it's just a quick little kind of additional form within the submittable system that we just want to see how the program's going. It's an opportunity to share pictures of your program, a story, a quote, just helps us, really as a communication tool. Finally, the funding term is for the next school year, so 22-23 school year, and the funds will expire on June 30th. Please keep that in mind, and that we do not roll over funds. And what that means is if you do have money left because you've built in that lovely, padding within your budget, we don't carry that over until the next year. Exceptions can be made. For instance, this whole pandemic thing, when we switched to remote learning, obviously there were some programs that weren't able to take place because kiddos were remote. So sometimes there are some extraordinary circumstances. That being said, please reach out to me directly, and I will work with you on that, but we don't automatically roll anything over. Then finally, funds go through the Munis system, which is the district finance system. What that means is that we don't cut checks directly to teachers, to schools. They are managed through that district finance system. Traditionally, usually how it works is the school administrative assistant will help with the ordering, purchasing of whatever is needed for your program. And so that's kind of how that works. Do you want to share anything else on Munis, Heidi?
I think you've covered it pretty much.
Okay.
Once a grant is awarded, we issue a grant code to the teacher, and that's what they will use to make their purchases through their school secretary. They will provide the codes that we give them, and that's how we track the funds. So.
Yeah, and obviously, if you are funded and you have more questions, you can reach out to myself, and we will, do our best to answer those. Then the Park City School District idea process. I'm going to kick it over to you now, Drew. Thank you for your patience.
Not a problem. So this process really was set up to give us information to answer two questions. One is can we, and the other is should we. The can we really comes from the fact that education is so highly regulated that there are more steps to do things that regular people could just go do than you can even imagine. When you figure we have our own board policy, state school board policy, state legislation, federal Department of Education. You can, it goes on and on and on and on. And anything, even as simple as just buying something, has a whole specific set of procurement rules around it that are critical and can actually wind up with some fairly serious consequences if you get them wrong. So we boiled it down to 5 questions to give us enough information so that we can understand what you're trying to do. Because these are questions we're going to ask you essentially anyways. They really come down to what problem you're trying to solve, what's your solution, what challenges are you going to face, who needs to know what's your communication, and then what does this look like down the road? Because what we're trying to get there is to both understand on the can we side of things, hey, we need to enough information that we understand, okay, we can guide you through, we know whether this has to be a bid process or RFP or just something you can purchase. Does this have to go through a curriculum committee, which has its own set of rules, or is this something that you could just go purchase? Plus understanding what does this mean down the road for sustainability? Is the district taking on a requirement to spend money in the future? And the other side of that really is around the should we. And that's looking at, because those of us who are looking at this have a district lens on things. One is to say, hey, we're already doing this somewhere else. We've already got a solution in place you can just have. Or, wow, this really does fit in. We didn't ever think about that idea. Awesome. Or, we've looked at this before and it was a dead end for us. So we really don't want to go down that road. So we're hoping with these 5 questions, we can get enough information that we can kind of see how that fits in and kind of guide things through. We try to keep it simple. I mean, of course, each of the 5 questions has sub questions just because we have to be that way. And there is on our actual district process, and I don't know whether this is specifically part of the Ed Foundation grant process. We also have some specific technology questions. If you are buying tech, just some things that we need to understand on the tech side to make sure it'll work on our systems and that sort of thing. I do know that for the Ed Foundation grants, we have a chance to look at them ahead of time to make sure that, for instance, we're a Mac district. So if you're buying software that needs to run on a PC, we have some discussions to have before that's a good idea. So that's really I think the core of what you need to understand around the idea process is it's designed to get you to think through your idea enough that you're like, I can defend this. And it gives us enough information to go, yes, great, we understand what you're trying to do and we can help you make it happen.
Thanks, Drew. Yeah, and something to keep in mind with the tech piece is we do ask that teachers work with their building, is it their ETS?
ETS.
Okay, because I've totally mixed that up before. So, but that's kind of the first step, just to, and it's, pretty low, low hanging fruit there, just to make sure it can be supported, like with Drew's example, if you want software that runs on a window, you haven't gone through a whole big process to find out that that might not be the best solution. So, just to differentiate that, the idea plan is part of the Park City School District process. So initially, generally the first step, well, actually it should be the first step is to complete your idea plan, get approval, sign off before you apply for an Ed Foundation grant. I don't need to see the idea plan. It's not anything that we require to be able to review, but it just ensures that the necessary steps have been taken, that if you are awarded funding, that you can spend it, that you can implement your program. Because if not, then we've awarded funding for a program that can't be implemented, and that funding could have possibly gone to a different program, different program in another school or at your school. So it's just really kind of a communication tool, just to make sure everything can be supported and has the green light.
And I'll add in, like, every year I revise through this process and I use the actual idea plan process to revise the process. The questions they're designed and in order to get you to think about what is it you're really trying to accomplish, and not just, hey, I saw a thing I'd like, but really get you thinking about why and what is the broader impact of that idea.
Yeah, that is a very good note. And just to give you all that are watching this or will watch this a little insider tip, is that these 5 questions that Drew alluded to that are right here, they are actually included or like a version of them is included in our grant application form. So you can literally copy paste from the idea plan into our application. And in fact, we encourage you to copy paste because there is no need to reinvent the wheel or do extra work. So please keep that in mind that, we collaborate, we are, partners in this, and that we certainly don't want to create more, more work for anyone. So, timeline, as I said, April 1 is our application deadline, no fooling there. And then after that, there's a review period where Ed Foundation staff, as well as relevant Park City School District stakeholders, will review applications just to make sure, for instance, with technology that it can be supported. If it's, a special education program, the director of special education, will give her an opportunity to, review and weigh in as well, just on the different asks. Also, the Ed Foundation, we may share your application. We have targeted donors that sometimes like to fund specific asks. So we may, share your application with a donor, just to see if they are interested in funding that program directly. And there is a box that you can check on our application form if you don't want it shared. Just please keep that in mind. Then in May, our grant committee will meet to deliberate and make recommendations on funding. And then May 27th is our Ed Foundation Board of Directors meeting. And that is when the board will approve recommendations, and that meeting happens in the morning. And I will literally start contacting applicants that afternoon as to award or decline decisions. And I can usually get it banged out in the afternoon, but if not, it may bleed in to the next day. But that being said, we will let you know by the end of the school year as to whether or not you have been awarded funding. And we'll also let you know if we have declined to fund as well. That being said, we do all of our communications via the submittable system. So, be on the lookout for an email. If you don't get it, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to, to share the information with you. Finally, then in early July is when your funds will be available. That's the start of the new fiscal year for the Ed Foundation as well as the school district. I know that most people are out off contract and not thinking or caring, and as they should be. So, once you return to work, turn on your email, you will have those munis codes in order to start spending. And if you do need them prior to that, contact me directly and we can work something out, but generally, needs to wait until July for those funds. And I'm gonna move on unless there are any timeline questions. And then just some tips for writing your application. Keep in mind that the majority of the application is a narrative, so it's telling a story, and we want to hear the story of a need that you have, a challenge, something that you would like to change in your classroom, how you're going to do that, and then what you want your results to be. So think of it as story time. That being said, keep in mind that all questions do have a purpose. We're not asking just to ask it, so keep that in mind. Be clear and concise. Your answers need to address the specifics of the questions, much like the idea plan. Our questions have the question and then kind of some sub questions as well. And really, that it is a guide. It's to help what information we need in order to make our decision. Then your answers are how you communicate your program's plan and story. As I said again, that it's your opportunity to tell us. Let's see. And again, that insider tip that our application questions are extremely similar to the idea plan questions. So please copy paste. We encourage you to do that. Then the committee is a general audience. I know that I have said that there are educators and students sitting on the committee as well. However, Not everybody on the committee is an educator or a student. That being said, students may not always know, things as well. So what you need to do is don't assume things, because you know what they say about assuming things. It's right there on the slide. Avoid acronyms. I know that education loves acronyms, so please avoid them. And if you're going to use them, define them early on in your application. I know that you don't need to write out project-based learning, 800 times, but define it early on, because not everybody may know what PBL is. So define them early on. And again, be clear and concise. And no eduspeak, just the education jargon, please avoid it, because not everybody will necessarily understand it. And, we just want to help you put your best foot forward there. Bottom line is assume that the people that are reading your application know absolutely nothing about the schools, about your program, about your needs. The need, the why. This is very, very, very important. Over the years, we've read a number of applications that confuse a want with a need. Please don't do that. It can be very easy to do, but you need to start with the need, and that's your why. What problem are you trying to solve in your classroom or school? Why is this program needed in your classroom or school? The need just needs to be very, very clear. And another tip is sometimes the need can be confused with the want, as I stated, and then that will lead you to request a specific product or vendor within your application. Please don't do that. It sends up lots of red flags with procurement. I see Drew nodding vigorously that your program focus shouldn't just be like the iPad that you want for your classroom. It should be, I need to find a way to engage my students in their learning, for these reasons. And so I need a tool to help me do that. I've identified the best tool to do that as, this tablet product or, whatever it is, but please just don't confuse the need and the want. Just keep in mind too that the need is the foundation of your application. Make it compelling. And I totally am guilty of getting caught up in this. It was funny because when I was putting this presentation together last year, I had just gotten done working on a very big grant application that I had Abby McNulty, our executive director, my boss, read, and I totally struggled because I was putting the need, the want first over the need. So very easy, and it's why it is good to have somebody else review your application. Outcomes are your planned results that can be measured, and they're SMART metrics. I think we've all heard about SMART goals, SMART metrics that starts with specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. What I've noticed that some of the biggest kind of pitfalls with applications over the years has been the measurable. That can sometimes be tricky, and also the specific as well. So keep those in mind. We do have a handy little handout on the website that goes into a little bit deeper dive with your outcomes. Then I have droned on long enough, so I'm going to kick it over to Heidi to talk about the budget portion of the application.
Thank you, Kara. Yeah, so this is just sort of a summary of what we've mentioned before about the budget. So you will be requested to complete a budget. There's a template in the application form, and it asks you to categorize the different amount of money that you want to spend, for example, in supplies versus technology versus books, etc. So you'll see those categories in there. When you're filling out the budget form, we ask, again, that you build in at least a 10% buffer in each category. We ask that you round up. We don't want to see any change in there. We don't want to see $10.45. Definitely round up and then bump it up 10%. and that's, you know, to cover any unknown expenses that may come up, for example, you know, shipping, or any other kind of expenses. Also, as we all, I'm sure, are aware, inflation is a big problem this year. So, you know, if you are getting a quote now for something that you're going to be purchasing in the fall, definitely we need to expect that that price is going to go up. So we definitely want you to pad that. Oh yes, and Kara brought up the form here, so you can see that there are different categories. At the bottom, there's an other category. So if you find that the thing you would like to purchase is not easily fitting in a category, go ahead and put it in the other, but we would love for you to put as much detail as possible in that note section so that we know how to categorize that. So that's about it as far as the form. Again, you know, just as we want to emphasize, just round up. No penalty for not spending all your money. And then I think, as Kara also kind of summarized, once your grant is awarded, you will get the letter or an email, and it will have your grant code in there. And that is what the teacher will be using to submit their requests with the school secretary as far as you know, ordering supplies and the things that are needed. All of the funds are kept in the district office, their accounting system called Munis. So it's all kept in Munis. Everything's paid out of Munis. Teachers will not be receiving checks. It just all runs through the Munis system. I think that's about it for
and something to keep in mind too is, you know, including detail, that is extremely helpful for us, because we then use this budget to put in the Munis system. And if we have a question about something, if we don't know where it should go or something isn't clear, then it may delay receiving your Munis codes in order to, you know, start spending for your program. So, because it might require some back and forth. So keep that in mind as well. And if you do have other sources of funding, you know, there's a section here, you know, sometimes we understand that, like, you could get, you know, a grant award for partial funding for something from the STEM Center or from community council. Maybe, you know, your school PTO has said that they will kick in some money for a program. You know, here's an opportunity, you know, to put that information in there as well. We've really tried to keep our budget very, very simple. So hopefully it will be. Finally, points for style. The committee is on your side and wants to fund you. Please keep that in mind, that this is not like, oh, we're trying to trip somebody up and we don't want to give them money. We're kind of like Oprah. We want to give everybody money. We want to give everybody a car for you and you and you. I wish we could, but our funds are limited. So sometimes it comes down to those points for style. And so we ask, you know, just keep in mind that we don't want to give the committee a reason not to fund your application. What that means is proofread. Proofreading is very important. You know, give it a look to make sure that it makes sense. Have somebody else read it for you. I love that Pamela is going to help out Miss Alvarez, and I'm sure she will be doing all of this, just, you know, reading through, making sure it makes sense, helping with any typos. And I strongly encourage to have somebody that isn't close to the project, you know, read your application, be it a parent volunteer, a spouse, colleague. If you're a high school teacher, maybe a student, instead of like detention, you could say, here's what I'm going to do. You're going to read my application for me and proofread it. So just, you know, an idea for those high school teachers. But that being said, it's a very good idea to have somebody read it that isn't close to it. A lot of times, because it's just hard for you to sometimes pick out some of those mistakes or something isn't clear because you've been working on it for a long time. You know, we understand that this process is not, you know, it's not quick. It's not, you know, easy. We are, you know, requiring you to think a little bit, but, you know, in the end, you know, we ultimately want to fund, you know, fund these programs to help solve needs. Use that collaborate feature. So. Reminders, just a few reminders before we move over to any questions. April 1 is the deadline. you need to apply to receive funds for next year. Unspent funds don't roll over. So, please, apply even if you do have some money left. We do need you to apply. That being said, too, if you have a program that was funded with an express grant this year, and you want to continue that program next year and you need funding, please apply for a classroom grant. Express grants are really only for our immediate unanticipated needs, and the maximum award is $1,000. So, but they're still available. So if you do have a need right now, that could be an option. And that being said, are there any questions? Okay, none, Pamela, you're feeling good?
No, other than, so she's going to be doing a service. She's going to bring someone to do mindfulness. So that's a service. It will be a service cut. Okay, perfect. And how does that work? Because we've both been reading all this stuff that you have. You have all this information out. So it's not like hiring a person, it's a company or something that brings that mindfulness. How does that work with the school district? And
so it's fundamentally, it still goes through our procurement process because we're still entering into a contract with a vendor to provide a service. There are some different rules if it's a service versus a product, but fundamentally it still goes through that process.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, perfect. So when we fill up the first application that goes through you, Andrew, she won't put the name of that product, or so it will be after she's awarded the money that then you will do that through the school district.
Yes. So generally in the idea process, you're not usually going to be saying, I want to use this vendor. It's, I want something like this. Now you might use it as an example of something like what they offer, which is, to give us an idea of budget, but knowing that depending on the dollar value, there may be bids, there may be a larger process to go through.
And generally kind of the rule of thumb, and correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, but it's generally $1,000 or more is when the procurement process like kicks in. That's when you've got to get the multiple bids. That
number has actually gone up to, I believe, $5,000.
Oh, it has. Oh my gosh.
Quote me on it.
Okay.
I realize we're being recorded. That is my remembrance offhand. And now I'm trying to look at my notes to see if I can find it quickly. But it's so it's $5,000. Below 5,000, there aren't bids needed. Above that, we start to get into very specific processes.
And Pamela, Bob Edmiston, Mr. Ed, should be able to help as well. And, possibly, Kathy as well, since this would be through the preschool program.
Yes.
That being said, there are folks out there that want to help, guide through that. So
yeah, she's talked to Kathy about it too.
Okay,
so.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, and just if you're, like nuts and bolts question, hypothetically, her, idea plan is approved, the grant is awarded. What she would do is the vendor, whoever, that's providing the service, they essentially like invoice, bill, the school district, and then that's who, ends up cutting the check to. And I would put those services in the professional service, like budget line under, within our budget. So form. Any other questions before? And Pamela, please know that you and Mrs. Alvarez can contact me anytime too, because I know sometimes as you're digging through the application, something can come up. And that being said, boom, here's my contact information. Feel free to take a picture with your phone if you want, or do a screen grab. I am in the district email system, but we don't have direct extensions anymore. Through the school district, we have a separate phone system now, but that's my direct number will ring right to me. So Drew, Heidi, anything else to share? I think that was like the, the quick and dirty tour of classroom grants. Pamela, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm so grateful that you want to help one of our educators, and yeah, just, really excited, for that, and look forward to seeing applications come in. And thank you all so much, and enjoy that last little bit of sunshine before it goes away on this beautiful day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.